All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Rex Bear. We have John DeSouza with us. This guy is the alter ego of Fox Mulder, the real X-Man. One of my favorite series of all time is X-Files. There's so many gems in there. And I'm going to ask as many questions as I can with the amount of time that John has with us. But first of all, I got to say, John, it's an honor to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. How the heck are you?
Thank you so much, Rex. It is great to be on here with you. You know, you're like the hardest working man on YouTube. You're like the James Brown of YouTube. I'm listening to you 1 minute. I'm listening to you during the day. And then here you are again, live. I mean, you just never stop going. It's awesome. The work that you do for the alternative community is awesome.
Thank you very much, folks. I paid him to say that. So, but if you enjoy what you're doing, is it really work? And I guess it is, but I love what I do. And I feel like if I wasn't doing this here, I used to do this for Fortune 100 companies that I work for, like during lunch hour and stuff, I'd be talking about the same kind of stuff. So wherever I am, I'm talking about this. I might as well do it here with you guys. But first of all, if you would, for the audience, because the last interview that you did with Jay, I read through a few of the comments. So just to get rid of the trolls right off the bat. Could you prove that you used to work for the FBI and you used to teach FBI agents how to be investigators?
Sure, absolutely. I'm John DeSouza. You know, I'm pretty well known in the intel community. I was a special agent in the FBI actually for 25 years. I was. As a matter of fact, this pin I have on right now is what is given as the 25-year pin. Service pin in the FBI. It is what it is. And behind me on the wall where I'm putting my finger right now is my plaque that actually has my credentials that I used, my real credentials that I used during my time in the FBI. What they do is they give it to you so that you don't go and like rob banks, you know, later on with your creds. They actually take your creds apart and they put them on a plaque here. And my badge number was 10585. That's publicly releasable information. As a matter of fact, let me tell people a PSA, because I'm in the paranormal community now, writing my books and all that. If you ever have anybody who is who claims to be an FBI agent, a CIA officer, or even a man in black claiming to be some intel, you never open the door. Well, you always get their name, John DeSouza. Get their badge number. My badge number is 10585. And you take those two pieces of information, then you call 202 area code, their headquarters, wherever it is. It's always in Washington, D.C. You always call that and say, hey, I got this guy at my door. Is he really in your agency? Is he a real dude? And with those two pieces of information, you can verify anybody who's claiming to be anything. Because let me tell you something, having been in the paranormal community now for a few years, there are people who claim to be CIA officers, FBI agents, and they're not. So please always verify. Don't talk to anybody. Don't accept anybody's word. Always verify that they are who they say they are. So with those, like I said, with those two pieces of information, you can verify anybody. Uh-oh. I lost your...
No, we're here. That was user error. Okay. Thank goodness. What did you have to do to get into the FBI? Because isn't nowadays to get in, you've got to be like the creme de la creme in your field if you're in the military or law enforcement?
Yeah, it's very difficult position to get. And luckily for me, when I was 23, 24 years old, I had no idea how hard it was to get in. So it's like one of those universe things, because I didn't know how hard it was to get in. It never really became a big, very difficult for me. I just kind of fulfilled the requirements, and I got in as a special agent. And I got in at a very young age. They no longer hire you right out of law school at the age of 23, 24. Now the average age is like 32. You have to have, of course, your 4-year degree. You have to have 3 years of a graduate degree or work-related experience that they want. So, you know, most of the people that they hire are lawyers, accountants, some former teachers, engineers, and it's usually a second for the position of special agent. It's usually a second career. So yeah, so the average age now is like 32. I became a lawyer. I went to law school. I graduated from law school, but I knew I didn't really want to practice law. What I did was I wanted to do something exciting, interesting. So that's why I was recruited right out of law school into the FBI, and that's when I joined.
You know, I actually worked for the FBI for like an entire week, or no, maybe it was a couple weeks when I was 19 doing temporary service in the kitchen. I worked as a cook in the FBI building for a couple weeks as a temp. This was, geez, so I was 19 at the time, so that would have been 20 years ago. Wow, that was
that at Quantico?
No. This was in Utah. This was in Salt Lake City at the time. So
really,
yeah, and man, what a bizarre thing. Even the lady that worked there, the main gal that worked at
cleared
at the restaurant, she was blind, and she
Oh,
would
wow.
take money. I mean, just talk about a weird situation. But how the FBI has changed since then. I wonder if they still hire temps to work at the restaurant as cooks. You know, that was obviously pre 2001. So it was very interesting. Nice people there. I remember cooking up some breakfast and meeting people. And there's real nice people that work for these agencies. And one thing that I find fascinating is the amount of flack on the mainstream news that many of these agencies get. So, first of all, there's got to be good and bad in every agency, just like every organization. There's white hats and there's black hats, right?
Right. And you don't have to prompt me very much for me to criticize the FBI, but I'm for the rank and file of the Bureau. That's what I always was. I was rank and file in the streets. I was a street agent. And those are the people that I support, not the leadership of any organization. It's not the leadership that I support or that people need to support, but the rank and file people who are trying to do the right thing. And the problem is when politics gets them, and the FBI has made plenty of mistakes. You don't have to prompt me very much to talk about that, but yeah, the FBI has made plenty of mistakes, but the mistakes usually always are prompted by the political leadership, not by the rank and file people in the field out there. So that's a very important point also to distinguish.
So how did it change over the 25 years that you were in? What was it like when you started?
Well, it wasn't the way it is now. I'll tell you, it wasn't, they were allowed to do their job in the global war on terrorism, for instance. I worked on the 93 World Trade Center bombing. All of the terrorists who were involved in that, they were all put in prison for a couple of 100 years, each one. And we were prosecuting terrorists. We weren't just getting rid of them and doing what's done now. It's very different the way it's dealt with now. And now the FBI has become a lot more of a political football, especially because of the leadership you had in there who was recently removed by the president. And it was just awful because they weren't able to function anymore and do their job without politics being involved. And that's the biggest change, unfortunately, that I saw in the organization. And it broke my heart. It really made me very sad.
And 2001, after that event unfolded, did it just change everything?
It really did. It really did, especially as you got further and further into it. And you could see, I could see personally that it was not what it appeared to be, that there's so many clues coming back on that make it appear that the entire deed was somehow manufactured. I mean, it was real. People died in large numbers, and the terrorists were real too. I could tell you that and they were real. But the event itself was somehow composed, put together. It was, in a sense, artificial, and you couldn't escape that conclusion as an investigator when you see passports that are in the rubble identifying these terrorists that are completely fine, not burned in this rubble that's ash, because and also the way that the buildings were destroyed, there was some kind of next level technology that appears to have been used in addition to the real planes that really crashed into there. Also, for 9/11, I don't believe for 1 second, that a bunch of 12th century savages were able to navigate these airliners at that airspeed in a jungle of skyscrapers and hit perfectly the way that they did those buildings. I believe they were on there. I believe it was real,
Right.
but I'm pretty sure there was some sort of next level technology, and that's what airline pilots have told me after the deed, that the level of expertise and the level of of just luck that would have had to be involved is like 1 in a million for them to just navigate that at that airspeed, that kind of plane, those kinds of planes in that field of skyscrapers, and be able to hit perfectly the target that they wanted. I mean, it's just not realistic. It's not realistic that they did that.
And what you said makes so much sense. So what would somebody that was going to design that, let's call them the dungeon master, what would they do? Well, first of all, they got to have a good patsy, right? So they get their patsy set up, they have them go train. And so, okay, well, you guys are actually going to the location to train to be a pilot. Then you're on the plane that hits. So they set everything up behind the scenes. So it does make sense in those aspects. But then when you start asking questions like, well, how did Tower 7 collapse within its own footprint? It didn't even get hit by anything. And it was a heavily fortified building. And it's well, I don't know, man. It was swamp gas from Uranus. I mean, people are just, and they don't even question those things. But, I do appreciate you bringing that up. And also, while we're at it, I've got to ask. I mean, I'm sorry, but I have to. It's HAARP's fault. It's blame them. What's up with all these false flags, John?
Yeah, these
Sandy Hook. Yeah. I could go on Boston Marathon.
Yeah. Again, what I want to emphasize, because I worked in the war on terrorism for so long, I want to emphasize with false flags, the terrorists involved are real. The civilian deaths, there are civilian deaths involved with a lot of these false flag operations that apparently are false flags. But there are real deaths involved also. And the terrorists are real, but they are what you just said. They're often patsies. They are set up to fail, set up to be caught, and set up to be very convenient for the people who really organize these deeds. And if you want to see the actual original blueprint of these false flags, all you have to do is, and this is not secret stuff, all you have to do is go look up Operation Northwoods. Operation Northwoods. That was the very first blueprint of false flag against American citizens that was put together by the CIA. And then it was taken to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon signed off on it too. And then the whole thing, it was a plan to kill American citizens on airliners, college students, and all kinds of civilian facilities, and kill them in large numbers, and then blame it on the Cubans, because at this time the CIA was completely focused on getting rid of Castro. And so this whole plan was put together. It was given to JFK, to President Kennedy. And he said, and he just had to sign off on it, and it would have gone forward. Instead, he was horrified, and he ended up firing the head of the CIA at that point and the head of the Pentagon at that time as well. It's unbelievable. But even though that plan was supposedly put in the ash heap, it wasn't, because if you see a lot of these, if you read that plan carefully and look at the outlines of it, a lot of those details are being instituted today.
You actually trained agents how to be investigators.
Yeah, I was a legal advisor in the FBI, used to give instructions on all kinds of stuff for FBI agents, especially investigation, things like that. So I try to bring that to people in my books as well. Now, especially my first book, The Para Investigators, I try to teach people what real investigation really means and what real evidence really is, because unfortunately that's been wiped out by television and by stuff where people just don't know what these things really represent, so that people can function in this age of deceit that we're in. We're in an Orwellian society now, where 100% of corporate news is completely false. It's all deceit. It's all manipulation. And people just need to learn how to distinguish, how to investigate for themselves, and how to see what's real and what's not.
So there's 6 corporations that control literally over 90% of the media. Very
That's
easy to
right.
break it. And they'll
Right.
give bits and pieces of information, and then people that are in the alternative communities have to come up with their own ideas and do their own investigation. I think that about 90% of the alternative community is full of repeaters. And then
Yeah.
there's that 10% of genuine researchers.
Right.
And I do my best to research as much as I can before I turn into a repeater,
Right.
because, I don't want to be repeating the same thing that Bob said just because it sounds good. So
Right.
like you brought up, it's multi-leveled, and instead of hiding the information now, just throw out so much information that it's like finding a needle in a haystack or finding a specific piece of sand on a beach. It's very difficult to do. So, and I want to get into, here's what I find fascinating is the ET phenomenon, the extraterrestrial possibilities, whether they're interdimensional, whether they're physical, whether they're both. And we talked off the air about my personal beliefs, but I don't need to get into that now. I want to get into what because first of all, it seems like we are being influenced from something behind the scenes. It literally feels like there is an entity that is feeding off of us that doesn't have human beings' best interests at heart.
Yes.
So what does it mean? They just psychopaths and they had a bad childhood, so they just hate us.
And here's what I know for sure. What I know for sure is that for the last 60 years during the modern age, there has been this alliance between what I call the elite powers in control, because I don't like to say the I word. I like to say the elite powers in control, these central banking bloodlines that are dominating over the nations. And there's been an uneasy alliance between them and a portion of alien visitors, of these alien visitors that are malevolent alien visitors, let's put it that way, who are somehow working with these elites. And there is a standing order that has been out for 60 years, has been out to all the nations, which just basically very simply says, do not reveal or allow to be revealed anything real concerning alien visitors, UFOs, or alien visitation in general. That order is out. That order has been in effect throughout all the nations. That's why you see whenever anything happens that's actually in the paranormal with UFOs or alien visitors that's actually real, you see this mad scramble. They don't have to wait for orders. This is a standing order that all the nations always obey and always follow to cover up anything. That's why you see this mad rush to cover up at Roswell, what happened in 1947 when we had those crashes of UFOs in Roswell, New Mexico. We just had the 70th anniversary of that event. That's why you see, even when there's a multinational event like Rendlesham Forest that involved an American military base on British soil, that in 1980, that was invaded by many UFOs and even had some nuclear devices that were shut down, some nuclear missiles that were shut down. And then you have this invasion of the base. And yet you have United States and England cooperate right away without having to be prompted. They cooperate right away in trying to cover up everything and trying to silence the soldiers that were involved, even the colonel for the entire base who was involved. They don't have to wait for orders. The cover up becomes immediate. So this order has been going on, and it goes beyond any president, any prime minister, and it's in effect all the time. Now, and then the question is, well, what's the reason for the order? What's the reason? Why is it that they just don't want? And here's the reason. Alien visitors want to be the ones to reveal themselves when the time comes. They don't want it to be interpreted or related or conveyed by anybody else, especially not the national governments. Go ahead, Edward.
Oh, this is great, and I appreciate that. So, what was it? An actual international treaty that was signed? I mean, is there some type of secret faction that? Okay, is there really men in black out there that there's an ET present? Boom, they're there.
I don't think that there was an actual treaty. I mean, there's a lot of talk that Eisenhower was involved with some kind of a meeting in a treaty that had to do with but if that had happened,
that was the one trading technology for abductees, right?
Yes. And you know what? And what's funny is I do believe that happened, but I don't think it happened because one of the things that the elite powers in control do. One of the parts of data flooding, which I always say, data flooding is better for tyranny than secrecy ever was. That's one of my taglines, and I say that everywhere I go. And that's because you don't need secrecy when you have data flooding. And what they'll do is they'll take real things that happen, and then they'll represent it in a false way, in a false thing that never happened. So that way, if anybody does come forward with evidence of this, hey, there was a treaty that happened between the alien back in 1940, between the alien grays and the. But then they already have out there in the public arena this treaty meeting between Eisenhower and the Greys that never really happened. You see, it wasn't real, and the evidence of it is also fake, very fake, with a lot of breadcrumbs of fakery all over these Majestic 12 documents, for instance, and it can be easily disproved.
You see this metal? Remember they're showing those pieces of metal that look like little pieces of tinfoil? And they're like, this is from the spaceship, and it molds, and it's nanotech.
Exactly. And now the problem is that part of data flooding is that those events could have really happened. They could have really happened. But now they're covered forever with this public announcement of fakery that is going to always cover it. So if anybody ever comes forward who's actually at the real meeting, it's no problem, because everyone will say, oh yeah, we know about that. That was debunked. That was fake. It was not true. That's just one of the layers of deceit that the elite powers in control use all the time.
Now, did you see the images from, his name's Paul Hellyer? He was high up in the cabinet in Canada, not the prime minister, he was below the prime minister, but he had a very prestigious position with the military. He was showing images, and they look like little grays. What would you say? Are those legit?
I have not seen them. I've heard him speak because I had to listen to his speech. But I'll tell you, the guy sound, to me, just from my first impression, the guy sounds very credible. He sounds reliable, stable. Sounds like an individual who had command of his facts. And I would have no reason to disbelieve anything that he says. And I would definitely look at his evidence very, very carefully with giving the benefit of the doubt to what he is saying.
I've been doing a ton of research into, and this is a rabbit hole that I didn't think I would go down. I was one to think that the Anunnaki were, was a made up story. I was actually, when I first started getting into it, I thought it was kind of a CIA psyop, Tavistock type operation. But the more research I did, the more fascinated I become with these infamous characters. They're written about in Sumerian cuneiform tablets. They were talked about even for previous Sumerian times. They've been adopted throughout Greek mythos, Egyptian mythos, all these different cultures around the world. There's this one connection. You've got these Anunnaki. So you talked about and I really want to get into this with you, the information you have. Do you think that the Anunnaki are legit, man? I mean, are those the perpetrators? Are those the dungeon masters that are pulling the strings behind the scenes that we don't see, that they throw in our face? Sorry.
Well, they were. I mean, but you're talking about even before the recorded history of man. I mean, we can see them represented everywhere on the monoliths, the megaliths throughout the Earth, and even on other planets. We see that they're, and I personally, I don't believe that alien visitors are physical at this point, that they can't, I don't believe that that's why my book is called The Extra Dimensionals. I believe they are extra dimensional, and that they don't really have the ability to be physical anymore in our universe. I believe that they can be physical for short periods of time. They change their vibration, and they can be physical for short periods of time. But when the Anunnaki were here, they were physical. That wasn't a problem for them at that point. Something changed though. Something changed, and now they cannot be physical for long periods of time here anymore. That's just, and I'm not sure what it was that changed, but yeah, it was the Anunnaki who were here. That's just one way of referring to them. But they were here, and they were manipulating DNA. They were creating all these hybrid races that were partially human and partially something else. That may be what we're looking at in the Nazca mummy that was put forward by Gaia TV. If anybody knows about that, we may be looking at a mummy of a hybrid species that was the type that are created by these alien visitors all the time. Because I don't believe that it's actually a physical that Nazca mummy. I don't believe that that's an actual alien visitor, but it is it does appear to be a non-human hybrid creature.
Now, I really want to get into hybrids with you, and I've noticed that a lot of people that get abducted that seem to also have, like, it goes in their family. You know, their parents,
Yes.
their grandparents, their kids, it runs in the family. A lot of times it's that missing factor, and some people don't like to admit it, but it's the Rh negative blood factor. That is a strong connecting point. So I am wondering why. Do you have any inside information on that?
Well, let me reveal that my blood type is positive. I think I'm pretty sure I'm O positive, and that may explain why I had my experience when I was about 9-10 years old. I had an experience where it might explain why I was rejected in that situation. And let me just tell you what happened. I was about 9 or 10 years old. I was in my dad's home, and I was on my bed. This was after I had a UFO observance experience a couple of weeks earlier. And I was scanned, and I saw a UFO. It made a connection with it, and it made a connection with me. And then I went home, and a couple of weeks later, I was sleeping in my room. And again, I was about 10 years old. And suddenly the room changed. The temperature, vapor, I don't know, but everything just kind of changed. And I went stiff as a board. And I was in my bed, and suddenly I feel hands at my feet and my head. And I felt myself being lifted up incredibly easily, like I was a helium balloon half filled. And I was lifted, and wherever they lifted me to in the air, I continued to just float there. And then these things, which I couldn't see because I was completely paralyzed, I couldn't see, were lifting me up towards this, and I saw the ceiling coming closer and closer and closer. And these things and this was about 1 a.m. It was nighttime. It was really late. And I was being lifted up towards the ceiling. I saw the ceiling coming closer and closer. And then these things that were carrying me, which again, I could just see shadows. I couldn't see the things that were carrying me. And they were passing through the ceiling. They were passing through the ceiling very easily. And I got caught at my forehead, wouldn't go through the ceiling. So they bumped my forehead against the ceiling a couple of times. And then they lowered me. And where they lowered me to, I stayed right there. And they started examining the ceiling, and I could see more or less the back of them as they were examining the spot on the ceiling where I wouldn't go through. They were like the worst engineers in the world. And then they kept looking at it, and then they kept lifting me up and trying again. As they kept bumping my forehead against this spot, I was able to move my neck more and more. And my first thought was look down at my bed to see if I'm dead, because that's what it kind of felt like. So I looked back, and there was nothing in my bed, so I was relieved. But then I could move over my head, and I was able to see towards my parents' bedroom was right next to mine, and the door was open, and I could see them in there. And I saw on the ground, I saw what looked like these 2 little gray children. They looked like children to me, holding their hands over my mom and dad in their bed, just holding their hands like this, like a stasis, like they were holding them and say, and I could see my mom and dad struggling. And I could see sweat on the bed underneath them. And it looked like they were struggling to wake up, but they couldn't. And I saw these little children, what looked like little children, holding their hands over the bed and keeping them asleep, it looked like to me. And as I was able to move my neck more and more, I then was able to look more at the first creature, and I could see those black wraparound eyes, and I could see it appeared what I know now to be like a gray creature. And I saw it. He saw me just for a second, and I heard the only words I was ever going to hear from him. All I heard was the one on the ground say, "He's awake." in my head. And as soon as he said that, it was like a cord was cut. I fell down into my bed, very heavy, like a sack of potatoes. And I just hit the bed. And then I looked and they were gone. Everybody, they were all gone. And so anyway, and that experience, I was awake after that. I was ready to wake up my parents and I was really excited. I was like, I would never sleep again. And then I fell asleep and I was out for like 8 hours. And in the morning, the adults were all walking around and deciding what to do, what happened. And it was crazy. So you just reminded me of that story with the RH negative, because I am O positive. It's funny.
Now, I wonder if your mom or your dad has the negative gene. So you would be like, it would be dormant with you. That's fascinating. That's an incredible story, by the way, because that correlates with one, just to confirm your story. I mean, I have a very dear friend that's told me many of her experiences and her family members' experiences. And she talks about these little grays being like little children. And she says they're real cute. And when I've brought to her before, do you think they're synthetic or robots? She's like, well, if they are, they certainly don't. She thinks that they might be a hybrid, like you say, but she doesn't think that they're just robots. She feels like they're actually real beings. And
they look like cute little children until you see the eyes. When you see the eyes and the eyes see you, like Barney and Betty Hill said, once you see those eyes, it's like, I don't know, it's just something very cavernous, very soulless that just you see in those eyes. And and then there's no resemblance to children anymore.
Do you think it's their eyes, or do you think it's like a suit covering their eyes possibly?
It could be. I mean, it could be. They just, to me, they just appear to be low-level creatures, like just created a low level to function at a low level. And so they may be, they just themselves may be very robotic, even though they're alive. I believe they're alive, but not in the same level as we are. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you think's making them, John?
The same ones that it's those Anunnaki, the same ones that made all these hybrid creatures that we see on the pyramids, that we see in Egypt, that we see in all of these megaliths all over, these half bird, half people, these alligator head creatures. There's the same ones that make these grays as well. Muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I know. I was just moving my screen here. I was making sure that we've got a whole bunch of people in the live audience right now. So this is great. It's actually more than normal. So very happy to see so many people here listening to this. And I was going to say, I feel like it's the Anunnaki that are manipulating, creating these beings just like they did pre-deluge. And they're using them to hybridize and to get DNA and extract it, maybe to continue their life. Maybe they feel like they're Cylons and they have to re-download their body in different DNA bodies. What do you think?
And that could be the ultimate plan, because one of the things I deal with in my books, especially my last book, The Extra Dimensionals, is the fact of how long these abductions have been going on. And also these cattle mutilations, the animal mutilations. And one thing that abductions and animal mutilations have in common is that they're not really what they're named for. They're absolutely not. That's another deception by the elite powers in control. Human abductions, alien abductions of humans are not really abductions. They are harvestings of tissue, of human tissue. That's their real purpose. That's the real agenda of what's going on with these abductions. It's to collect this human material. They're building up some huge, the same thing with cattle mutilations. They're not mutilations or animal mutilations. That's not what they are. They are harvestings of animal tissue. That's what they are. That's their real purpose. That's their real agenda. Same, and again, and if you think how long these things have been going on, how many cases, I mean, just the cases I've looked at just in the last 20 years or 40 years, there's so many of these abductions and these animal mutilations, and they've been going on for so long and there's so many cases of them. Just think how much there's some kind of bank that they're building up of this human tissue, animal tissue. And eventually the thing about money in a bank is that eventually you have to spend it. You have to use it for something. And eventually they are going to use this enormous bank of human tissue, animal tissue. it's going to be used towards something. Well, what's it going to be used towards? It's going to be used towards what the Anunnaki were doing in the past, to create these hybrid creatures, to create these monsters, these creatures that are going to help them with their ultimate agenda.
H.R. Giger, man.
Yeah.
He was in the know. I'm telling you, that guy, as far out as he was, the stuff that he put together on his canvas, his art, parallels what I was just thinking of, these Anunnaki dudes taking this DNA and creating some type of like physical bioform that will allow them to feed off of it. And it would be like some chicken that you see in those new vertical farms. They'll look like chicken in the Matrix, where they genetically modify them so they can't see, and they just sit in these freaking machines while they get fat, and then they get slaughtered. And I mean, it's wow. I mean, how far could they go with this, man? It's funny, but it's scary at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on something like they like, and they're just like, I mean, oh, the loose, we enjoy his soul. Just, man, what are we going to do? I mean, if they got that kind of tech, think of what they could do right now. I mean, it's just, is that why they're setting up the Galactic Corps? Did you see that recent article where they're, the Air Force is going to have they're pushing for a new, kind of like the Marines under the Navy, a new branch to have military troops ready for combat in space?
Yeah, well, that's another agenda of the elite powers in control. They want to push us all out into space. They want this. They want to weaponize space, and they want to make space travel like the new giant global conflict that they want us all involved in. And the reasons for that has nothing to do with fighting alien invasion. You know, it has to do with the nations seeking out power. That's what it's really about. And that's why all the nations, and now private capital, is now going into space travel and the weaponization of outer space. The reason this is being pushed so hard is because the nations know there's no alien life out there in our solar system, in our galaxies, and in other galaxies. There's no alien life out there, but there's lots of alien life coming through the Earth all the time. That's because the Earth is primarily a gateway. It is not, it's planet second. You know, Earth is like the planet of 1,000 galaxies. There's alien races coming through here all the time, but they're not in our physical space, because they were in the past when the Anunnaki you referred to. There was a time when and that's why we see civilizations on Mars, the moon, throughout, and other planets too. There's civilizations out there. So what are the nations after with this push for outer space? The nations are after power. They know that there's ruins. They know there's alien tech. That's the big prize. They want this alien technology. They want to increase their power. And that's why they want to have this giant push to outer space. If you want to see what I'm talking about, just see this movie called Passengers with Christopher Pratt. It's a 2-hour commercial. Yeah, it's a 2-hour commercial for sending your kids into outer space. There's no other reason for that movie to be made. It's just, and there's lots of movies like that.
Before I forget, because this is parallel to what you just said, sending kids into outer space. Did you hear the ex-CIA guy come on Alex Jones' show and say that he thinks they could be kidnapping children and shipping them to Mars?
Oh, he didn't say there could be. He said it was. That is the situation. He said that's what's happening.
Okay? Yeah, tell us about that, please.
I was very saddened by it, and I'll tell you. I can tell you. It was for people who don't know, the ex-CIA guy, Robert David Steele. He went on Alex Jones, who I'm a great admirer of Alex Jones because of what he does, and I also was a great admirer of Robert David Steele because he's a former CIA agent, and he agrees with me on a great point, which is that we need to abolish the CIA, which I think is terrific. However, unfortunately, on this occasion, he went on Alex Jones. He had the standard interview. He's very interested in politics. He wants to get into politics. He wants to do a lot of things. And unfortunately, he went on Alex Jones, and towards the end of the interview, like a guy getting ready to throw a grenade, he got like a funny look on his face. And he leaned forward and he made sure to mention towards the end of the interview, hey, Alex, if people really want to know what's going on with secret space program in outer space, I'll tell you right now, there are many children that are being kidnapped on the Earth and are being transported to a colony on Mars. And it's happening right now. Unfortunately, Alex Jones, it was towards the end of the interview, so he didn't really question it. He just kind of glossed over it and started talking about other stuff. And oh yeah, and he didn't examine it the way that, or question it the way he should have. And then the interview ended. Well, come to find out, it was a prepared hit job against Alex Jones the whole time. The global wires, within a couple of hours, not days, not in a week, but within a couple of hours, the global wires, I'm talking Reuters and the other global wires, had this out as a story. In other words, the stories had already been written before the interview happened. The stories all said this: Alex Jones claims with guests that children are being kidnapped to Mars. And they had an interview with NASA where NASA says, okay, we're going to tell you there's no child slaves on Mars. That's not a thing. It's not real. So all of this had been prepared ahead of time. And I'm going to tell you a conversation that happened. And I don't have anybody wiretapped. I don't have any special information. But just from the conditions of what happened, I know that this is what happened. Robert David Steele is not a malevolent guy. He is not. He's a very sincere guy, and he believes in trying to dismantle this secrecy apparatus that is so tyrannical in our country. But what happened to him is he's interested in politics. So here's the conversation that I know. I'm speculating, but I absolutely know that this happened. Because he's in contact with mainstream media, because of his political things, he's in contact with regular politicians, Cynthia McKinney, the former senator, and he's trying to get a lot of political things done. So he was probably, pretty certain he was in contact with some mainstream media figure. And they probably told him, hey, that's great. That's this interview that you've got going with Alex Jones. You know what? Ask him about child slaves on Mars towards the end of the interview, because we're really interested in hearing his reaction on that. And Robert David Steele probably said, okay, I'll make sure to ask him that. And just innocently, not knowing anything more. And I'm very certain that Robert David Steele then went forward. And if he would admit that that's what happened, I think it would go better for him. Because right now, he was just answering questions with Carrie Camelot, Project Camelot. And he said, this is the only time I'll ever answer questions about this, because Alex Jones has taken down the interview. Alex Jones is saying, this guy set me up. And it really does look that way, because Robert David Steele, right afterward, he went on yesterday with Carrie on Project Camelot. And the first words out of his mouth were, well, the whole thing was a hit job. The whole thing was a hit job against Alex Jones. And yeah, that's what it was. But the problem is
President Trump, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Because one of the things that the deep state, one of the things they're terrified of right now, and this, again, this is more behind the scenes stuff. Donald Trump is getting ready to, whether he's going to do it or not, he is making the preparations to create alternative network media, an alternative network. And the deep state is very concerned about this. So they're trying to attack different bases of support that he has in the alternative media, like Alex Jones, try to wipe them out and again attack Donald Trump at the same time. But what I'm saying is Robert David Steele was part of that hit job, probably unintentionally. I don't believe he did it on purpose. I think he was just, he's in these constant conversations with the mainstream media figures, and so I think they used him to help this operation as the final piece in this operation to go forward. Because if you look at what happened immediately the same day, you can tell that this was an operation that had been set up already way ahead of time. The articles had been written, the wires had been alerted, and all of this, and NASA had already been contacted to be told, what was coming and what they were going to say to make the whole thing complete. So it's very unfortunate. And I think it's going to have a lot of effects for a long time to come, and here's the worst part, because it goes back to something that we were talking about. The worst part is this: there could actually be children being kidnapped and being sent to Mars, because this could be an example of what we were talking about before, where the elite powers in control, they set up this theater, this operation to put forward something that's really happening in a ridiculous context, in something to make it look bizarre and stupid and crazy, so that if information actually ever gets out on the real operation, what's happening, a real whistleblower steps forward, it'll be covered. It won't matter because it's in the public arena in this ridiculous way.
Is that how you can explain seeing so many of these exercises gone terrorist events that are in cartoons like Family Guy, The Simpsons? There's I could count more than what's on the fingers of my hand. There's so many times that events unfold, whether it be Robert Williams' suicide, the same day that he commits suicide, Family Guy comes out with an episode where he's almost commits suicide. I mean, how is that a coincidence? Really?
Now that's a separate thing, though, because that is more like, and this is something that the elite powers in control use all the time also, but it's a separate branch of their actions. That is like sigil magic. It is like sorcery. It is, and it's at least that's the best way to describe it. It's when they put into the human consciousness predictions and sensibility of something that's going to happen in order to help it come true in real life. It's like the reasons why they put these hidden messages and codes on the money, where you see on this paper money. It's one of the reasons that paper money hasn't been eliminated yet, because it is a major outlet for sigil magic that they use. It's a type of sorcery, or at least sorcery is the best way I can describe it. It's something that they use all the time. It's
science, but it's sorcery.
Yes, it's science that's advanced to such a level, like Arthur C. Clarke said, that to us it's indistinguishable from magic. It just looks like magic, but it's real and it happens, and it's just them using things like the money, like everybody knows on the money. If you fold a dollar bill the right way, you can actually see the Twin Towers happening on there. You can see Oklahoma City happening on another piece of money.
Did you see the alien?
I've seen it. I've seen it before. Yes.
It looks like a cone head. It's got the it looks like the gray, and it's got the third eye chakra right there with the Star of David. It's very eerie. Yeah, and you can see it. You can call it swamp gas, but it's definitely there.
Oh yeah. And that is sigil magic. That is it's a kind of sorcery that is used by the elite powers. You ever made them yourself?
You ever made a sigil yourself? Have you ever made a sigil yourself? Sorry to interrupt.
No, I would not do that or participate in anything like that. No. I mean, but unfortunately, I'm a part of the system whenever I handle any cash money, because that puts it's in your hands. It puts anybody who handles cash money, puts that into our consciousness. It spreads it into humanity. And that's what they want. Unfortunately,
it's alchemy at its finest. And the thing about sigils, though, is you can create a sigil for something good, you can create it for something bad. I feel like these guys that control and influence things, they do it for very nefarious purposes to benefit them. But I also feel like they've hijacked a lot of these symbols that are actually you could use as good and use it against them, use it against the powers that be. But so many people are brainwashed into thinking if you think outside of your typical parameters, then you are going to burn in hell, because, Jesus said, don't do it. When in fact, Jesus probably didn't even say that, but that's a whole other episode. Well, I guess we could intertwine it with this, because the Vatican, they hide a lot of stuff, right? I mean, organizations like the Vatican and these scriptures that are talked about, they actually talk about extraterrestrials, not a singular God in a cloud with a long beard.
Absolutely. And I always tell people, there's no such thing as the aliens. They're not a monolithic group. There are segments. And one of the ways that you can see that is because if you go through the case studies, there are many negative, malevolent aliens who create negative effects. Like 1961, the Betty and Barney Hill abductions. Those were very negative, involuntary events. Where they were taken against their will, and that's malevolent actions that went forward. But there's many other experiences throughout the years. We see with Billy Meyer, we see with many other experiences that are positive experiences. I've spoken to people who have had experiences with extra-dimensional creatures where they have been healed of serious diseases, where they have had their abilities and their talents have increased to incredible, extraordinary levels. And so there's a portion of alien visitors that are working, trying to help us, trying to do things for us, to help better us. So we need to learn the distinction real fast so that we can reach out to the good ones and the benevolent ones and avoid the malevolent ones as much as possible.
So give us some gems that we can take to the bank, some just powerful knowledge that we can't go find in the open realms and in the public realms. Like, what's something that really took you over the edge, or something you feel would be important to share with us?
Well, the main thing is, well, right now, a very topical thing is that we have all these whistleblowers that are coming out, that are creating all kinds of conflict in the paranormal, in the alternative community, and in society in general, because a lot of these whistleblowers are coming forward with information that just seems to me like it's possibly planted, like it's possibly being used to spread disinformation and stuff that isn't real. But so I'm always asked about that. I'm always told, okay, what about this name? What about this person? Is this person a plant? Is this person fake? And I can never do the analysis that way. Instead, what I do is try to teach people to fish for themselves instead of giving them a fish. And the simple thing is, here's the analysis that we use at the FBI in order to evaluate an informant, a whistleblower. They're the same thing. They're the same thing. And what you do is always a two-pronged analysis. And if you apply this to anybody who's coming forward with any information, you can, for yourself, you can decide right away, this stuff is no good. We reject this. Or it is good. We're going to give it a chance. We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And it's two-pronged. One prong is evaluate the person themselves, the person that's coming forward, whether they're a whistleblower, they're an informant, whatever they are. And it's the first part of it is called MAP. It's called MAP. You analyze motives. You got to get the motives. Analyze their access to that information. How do they get it? Where does it come from? Motives, motives. What are their motives? What are they looking for? Are they looking for money, for fame? Or are they just looking to help other people that have a common experience? And then last part of MAP is personality. Are they stable, reliable? Are they consistent? Was what they were saying 2 years ago, is it the same or similar at least with what they're saying now? See, so that's the first part, that you analyze the personality, and that's MAP under that. The second part is you analyze the material. So that's SUC. It's substance, the actual substance of what they're bringing forward. What kind of stuff is it? They're saying that kids are on Mars. Third person report, that's it. That's all they've got. And then the second part you call unbelievability test. Is it believable? Is it credible? Is it something that, or is it completely novel? Is it something completely that's never been heard before? And then the last part, C, it's corroboration. Is there any, it doesn't have to be witnesses, other witnesses. It can be an item of evidence, anything that's consistent with this really happened. So that's the second part, material and personality. That's it's MAP and it's SUC. Well, it's SUC. That's the best way, the second part. And here's the trick about this double-edged, this double-pronged analysis. If a person passes one part, they don't have to pass the other part. And we can take that information and really consider it and really look at it very carefully. In other words, if the person has a personality that has such stability, reliability, then you're going to pay attention, and this is a natural human tendency, you're going to pay attention to what they say, regardless of how much substance is there. On the other part, even if you don't know anything about their personality, about the individual, if they pass on the material prong, in other words, their material is rock solid, it's backed up, it's backstopped, it's reliable, it has some substance to it, then you don't really need to know that much about their personality because the material has such value, intrinsic value, that you're going to give it a pass. You're going to look at it very carefully. So yeah, that's what I try to do with people. I try to tell them, I'm not going to tell you which whistleblower is a fake or which one is real, but I'm going to let you have this test so that you can apply it yourself and look at it very carefully, and you can evaluate the person for yourself. And this test will always give you the right answer, pretty much.
That's cool. I absolutely like that. It's a multiple step process that you can take. It's a formula that you can use to get to the truth, or as close to the truth as possible. You know, I really respect that. And so I guess that's what you taught people when you were in the FBI as an teaching to be an investigator. What do people in the FBI think about people like me and conversations that we have here on the Leak Project?
Well,
Mr. Conspiracy theorist galore over here.
Well, if you want to know the truth, it's like secret pleasure because most of the rank and file, I mean, they can't openly be into this sort of thing. They can't openly be reading David Icke books and listening to Rex Bear. But in private, man, they absolutely do. They absolutely, and I know personally of people who listen to people who are in the national security structure, who listen to you and to others that are on the alternative media, and they just can't do without it. They can't do without it, and they love it. But they can't be open about it either. That's what they think.
Well, that just made my day. Once again, folks, I paid him to say that. So thank you, John. I appreciate that. That's cool. I mean, that makes me feel good to hear that people actually think for themselves, even a part of these establishments, that the media paints a picture of everybody being evil. And the media is so good at just spinning things, and creating that division so they can sell more ad space, I guess, and get the formulas they want to get. But one thing I did learn at a young age is how much influence many of these alphabet agencies have in the mainstream, even movies and shows and media. And here's one reason I was thinking about this the other day. Even with an alternative site like Alex Jones as an example, he's got over 2 million subscribers on YouTube. That's pretty big. Yeah. But you know what? You go to some of these bands that have 20 million, 40 million subscribers. And then you think, okay, well, maybe that makes sense why there's the 27 Club and certain people end up getting whacked at the age of 27, which I also think is a part of that ritualistic that you're talking about, Sidzils. Well, I think the 27 Club is a very, very dark part of the entertainment industry. But it seems like if somebody starts speaking out too much and not conforming with what these agencies want them to, boom, they disappear. They're gone.
Yeah, there's a lot of unexplained deaths that are going on and that happen all the time. And it's difficult because it seems like the investigations on those deaths are already arranged way ahead of time before the deaths even happen, because everything's just too down pat perfectly. Things are, the statements seem to be prepared ahead of time, and all the loose ends are tied up ahead of time. And this is going on in a lot of different segments of society, and it's one of the reasons why we need to break free of these elite powers in control, who are right now in this major offensive against alternative media. They're trying to and their fake news campaign against alternative media has failed miserably and has turned into a counter assault against them, because now we're all finding out that corporate news is fake news. All of the corporate news outlets basically are 100% fake and false, and they have no intention of putting out any real information anymore. They haven't for decades, and so they're just used for manipulation, disinformation. And the great thing is, people are waking up to that fact. They're waking up and they're turning on alternative media, and that's what they have to keep doing.
Let's jump back to your works. You've written The Para Investigators, 52 True Tells and Concepts of Supernaturally Gifted Investigators, and then you've written The Extra Dimensionals, True Tells and Concepts of Alien Visitors. So first, I'd like to ask, give us one incredible tell of a supernaturally gifted investigator in your first work.
Sure. I've got in there, I've got a story in The Para Investigators of the story of the death from a broken heart, which is the story of something that happened in 1996 in Atlanta, Georgia, where we had an Olympic village set up. And there was a security guard there. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, when families were streaming all over the park, it was a big party atmosphere. There was Olympic athletes being interviewed by media, and it was just packed with many, many thousands of people. And in there was a security guard named Richard Jewell, who was a paunchy guy with a Southern drawl. Didn't seem like anybody who was going to accomplish a great deal in life. But on this one night, he became the greatest investigator who ever lived, because he found an unattended hiking bag, one of these giant things that's like about 5 feet tall, with a frame, stands on its own, and it's loaded with stuff. And instead of just hauling it into Lost and Found like most security guards would have, or hauling it over he didn't touch it. He put up a police line around it, and he started warning people to clear the area, suspicious package, clear the area. And he radioed in to his superiors that this had been found and that they should send help and all the proper procedure protocols that he should have followed. And what happened was people kept on walking closer to this package, closer and closer. And these were families with kids, and they were walking close to this package. They weren't listening to him. And he became more and more agitated. He even became hysterical. And this is on video. People can see this even today. And he started screaming and shouting, "People, this is a suspicious package. Get out of the area. Don't come close to this. Get out of the area." And he shooed people away, and he became more and more high-pitched and more hysterical as this went on. But it worked, because people did start clearing the area. And a short time later, that bomb, it went off. And it killed one person, which was a tragedy. But if he hadn't done what he did, it would have killed dozens of people, including children. So what happened after that was, of course, he was declared a hero, but investigators on the ground started looking at those tapes I just was talking about. They started looking at him clearing the area, not touching the package, and it became apparent to them.
He was a suspect, right?
Say again?
He was a suspect, right? Obviously.
Yeah. So because what became apparent to them was the same thing that was apparent to me. As I looked at those tapes also, it was obvious that he knew it was a bomb. And he did know it was a bomb. Now, because they're purely material investigators, their conclusion was the only way he could know it was a bomb was because he was the bomber. My conclusion was very different. I knew right away that the way he knew it was a bomb was because he remote viewed inside that package, or he had a vision or some other supernatural ability where he saw there was a bomb inside that package, because he never touched it. He never looked inside of it. And yet he himself, in the months afterward, also corroborated that he absolutely knew it was a bomb. And if you listen to his voice, you listen to him screaming at people at the top of his lungs and motioning with his hands to get out of here, get out of here. This thing could blow. It was obvious he did know it was a bomb. And the only explanation is supernatural for him having seen. In the months afterward, he never did admit that he saw what was in there supernaturally, but he did admit that he did know it was a bomb later on. So, of course, they ruined his life. They destroyed his life. They declared him a suspect. The newspapers all went all over the world with the news that he was probably the bomber, that he had made up this bomb because he was a wannabe cop and he wanted to do all this. So they basically ruined his life for 88 days. At the end of the 88 days, for the first time, a U.S. attorney stepped forward and said, "Whoops, sorry, he's not a person of interest. He's not a guy." But it was too late. His health was broken, and he died. He died at the age of 42 from heart disease and a couple of other things. But I always maintain that he died of a broken heart, because he loved law enforcement and he loved these agencies. And what he did was he used an ability that he had to save dozens of lives. That's all he did. He was a great hero. And instead, he was treated globally. I mean, globally, he was treated like he was an evil villain. And of course, people know that shortly after that, Eric Robert Rudolph confessed to being the real bomber and to putting together that bomb in Olympic Village. And he had done several other bombings as well. So that also corroborated that he was the bomber. So anyway, that's just one example that I have in my book, The Power Investigators, of many, many supernaturally gifted investigators who all they did was help people and save people's lives. And then sometimes, because people don't understand or accept the manner in which they provided that protection, they excoriate them, they punish them.
It reminds me of the superhero story. That the superhero has to have an alternative identity, because if they know who he is, the people he's saving go after him. Yet the villain, the one that's causing all the pain and suffering, he gets all the money, he gets all the honey, he gets all the women, he gets all the fun, and he causes all the chaos. So that's, it's funny because I have a friend, she passed away, unfortunately, at a very young age. And she was like this master hypnotherapist. And I was talking to her about that Flash Gordon thing, like, man, I would rather be Flash Gordon than Ming. And she's like, why? Ming gets to have all the fun. He's got the castle, the dynasty, everything else. Why would you want to be the good guy when the villains are the ones that get all the fun? But, some people are just born into that, man. Some people they don't care about that as much. That's secondary. They would rather, for some reason, want to help people when they get shit on all the time. It's just bizarre. Like what you're doing is, I feel pretty honorable. The fact that you worked in law enforcement / FBI for 25 years, and you're coming out now kind of giving an alternative aspect to the industry and the paranormal. People have been called conspiracy theorists for so long. It's neat to talk to somebody that has some credentials and say, yeah, it's a good thing to be a conspiracy theorist because you're thinking for yourself and you're not actually a brain dead zombie that's like 2 steps away from walking around like they do in Walking Dead, but maybe not eating people's brains. I mean, that's what I see when I look outside now. People are walking zombies. Do you see that? I mean, what's going on with people?
Absolutely.
By design.
And, conspiracy theory was a label that was created by a CIA shop after JFK's assassination, because they were trying to brainstorm how to stop people from theorizing or going after the real truth of JFK's assassination. And so they came up with this label, conspiracy theory, to designate forbidden knowledge so that people will know, you better not talk about this, because if you do, the mainstream media is going to label you and say that you're a conspiracy theorist, and then you'll have no credibility. You'll be labeled as crazy, insane. And so now the new label is now that kind of run its course, and people are kind of wise to that. Conspiracy theory has kind of lost its power, and so now fake news is the new label that their mainstream media is trying to use, and to create more of these zombies that will know, oh, I better not talk about that. I better not listen to this information, because if I do, I'm going to be labeled. I'm going to be labeled conspiracy theory, fake news, or whatever the latest label is. And it works. It works tremendously well on culturally conditioned minds.
I'm looking through the comments section because I would like to answer some, or I would like it if you could answer some questions from the audience here. And there's just so many people in here, and it's scrolling so fast. Folks, if you have a question for the guest, please feel free to ask it, and I'll make sure to respond this back to our guest here. And for those of you that are just getting to the show, make sure to check out John's book. You can actually find him on Facebook, as well as if you go to, what is it, John Tama Books.
Yeah, John Tama Books. Yeah, but if you just Google John D'Souza, DESOUZA, you can find all my stuff. It's pretty easy. I've got like 5 pages of results. All my stuff is there.
Thank goodness for search engines.
Yeah, and my books are available on Amazon, and it's important stuff that needs to get out so that we can continue the fight against the elite powers in control and their minions and the mainstream media and all the false information that's out there.
Absolutely. Do you mind answering a few questions from the audience?
I would love that.
Awesome. Okay, great. Yeah. So who killed JFK?
Everybody did it. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody who was there at the time. All of the and this is the problem with government and is that in government agencies is that they just follow orders. And so it depends on what your definition of being involved is. But if the Secret Service was told from a level above the president, they were told, you're going to stand down this day. And the head of the agency, stands down. And for whatever reason, but he didn't know there was going to be an assassination. But let's say he stood all his guys down that day. They didn't run alongside the limousine like they were supposed to. But he didn't actually know there was going to be an assassination. But if he participated by standing down, then is he equally guilty? Is the Secret Service equally guilty that day? That's the question. Because if that's the case, then pretty much every agency was given orders to do certain things that day that were out of the ordinary. And so that's why I like to say everybody did it. Because at one level or another, everybody was advised something was going to go down that day. And
where did it start? Do you know?
Say again?
Where did it start? Who gave the order?
It's the same people who gave the order for 9/11. It's the elite powers in control, the central banking families, bloodlines. They're not families. Bloodlines that need to control everything, that were so alarmed by JFK, just like they were alarmed by Lincoln, saying that he was going to go back to a partial gold standard, silver gold standard with our money.
So that was the real reason. It wasn't alien disclosure. It wasn't the real reason was he was going to break out of the Federal Reserve, and he went goodbye.
That was the prime motivating factor for the elite powers in control who ordered his death. That's what I believe. That was the central reason. There were others as well, but that just helped to get more people on board with the assassination. That's what I believe.
Somebody in the audience is asking if you ever feel like your life is in danger because of the information you.
No, not at all. Not at all. Because everything I talk about is it's paranormal. It's esoteric. It's not the sort of material that the government is concerned about. They only care about stuff that they see as real world stuff. So if I was to be running around telling you bad things about politicians or things that are going on in the political world, then I think the level of concern would be much more. But everything that I talk about is in the paranormal community. It's esoteric knowledge. It's stuff that government people don't really see as real, unfortunately, but that's just how they see it. And I've learned that over this last few years, that all the topics in my books are stuff that they're not that concerned about. So that's how I see it. That's why I don't feel like that danger is there.
What's the biggest threat in the eyes of the FBI and most people that work for the Bureau?
Well, the biggest threat for them is always terrorism, because that's always been a central mission for them. And that's always been something and I'm talking about the rank and file. The leadership is always temporary and that changes and so forth. But for the organization itself, terrorism is always real terrorism. I'm talking about, not when they're ordered to go after people who just want to be in the middle of the forest and be left alone. That's not real terrorism. And FBI rank and file knows that. They know what real terrorism is, and that's always their primary concern.
So, like, what's some stuff that you can tell us that we don't hear about the mainstream news that would be considered a very serious red level terrorist event that you guys thwarted? Because you guys were there, you took care of it, made sure it didn't happen. There's such a thing as a statistic that FBI agents can claim and others can claim as well. It's called Terrorist Act Prevented. It's actually a little form that we can fill out and we can check off a box and take credit. And we can say Terrorist Act Prevented when there's an operation that's going forward that's going to kill a lot of Americans, and we stop it.
and I've been given awards for that sort of thing, and many other FBI agents have been given awards for those sort of things. And the only sad part is that we can't actually say the act that we prevented, because it was prevented. So therefore, it never went into the public eye in a trial, in a criminal trial, and anything, because it was prevented. So it's just funny because we can never talk about it because nobody ever found out about it.
It's like one of those bittersweet things you would love. I mean, it would be neat to get a little bit of accolades, but the fact you thwarted something from happening, that's definitely enough in and of itself. I find that fascinating, because then the media will always push what they're supposed to, and really not give credit where credit is due. So what?
Well, I did get some accolade. Here's my
Nice.
This is called a device trophy, something like that.
Device trophy, something like that.
Yeah,
oh, that's cool, man.
And it's a what's it called? It's a counterterrorism investigation, outstanding counterterrorism investigation of 2008.
Wow,
So,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah,
That's
and it's pretty cool. And it came with a pretty large cash prize.
Did it? You got cash too?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah,
Cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's a cool thing, at least, even though I can never talk about certain things. I'll always have that as a reminder of the sort of thing that we were able to prevent. Let's put it that way.
What is the biggest terrorist threat? I mean, you say terrorist, but I mean, if you were to think about your past 25 years and things that you've stopped from happening that could have been terrorist events, or things that did take place, is it the Muslim extremists? Is it the Christian extremists? Is it the Smurf extremists? Is it the the pagans that dance naked in the woods? I mean, is it the Amish people? Who is it, man? And I hope I'm being sarcastic about the Amish people.
Yeah.
Or am I?
No. The biggest threat always is these false flags that are put together so carefully, that are moving forward against the American people, and they're put together at the level of the elite powers in control. And the biggest threat is always that they're finally going to use one of these false flags to paint somebody. Like right now, the elite powers in control, they're losing the global war on terrorism, and they know it. They always need this. They always need to have some kind of fake conflict. It's real, but it's actually fake manufactured. Like the global war on terrorism, the jihadis against the Western world, and to keep us occupied, keep us involved in that, so that we never look up and say, what's really going on? So they're losing that right now. So the elite powers in control are very desperate to get a new global conflict going, because ISIS is basically getting ready to be wiped out, because that's coming very soon. And so because of that, they're going to lose that whole conflict that they set up so carefully. And so they want to get us involved in the next thing. And the next big global conflict that they want is nuclear war between Russia and the United States. That's their next big thing that they are pushing for, with all their minions in the media worldwide. Worldwide, this is happening. And all the political parties that they control, not just in this country, but in other countries as well. And they're trying to get this nuclear war between Russia and the United States going. They need that as the new global conflict. And so because of that, the biggest terrorist threat that faces the world right now is a false flag between Russia and the United States, where they're going to do something with nukes or even conventional weapons on a large scale, like 9/11. Well, that was actually more than conventional, but using even next level technology, and then saying to kill thousands, but then saying, oh, the Russians did it, and then providing some manufactured evidence to show that it's very easy to manufacture evidence in that sort of thing, and to plant it in the right places. It's very easy, especially when you have an obedient mainstream media that will report anything the way that they're given it, regardless. So I would say that's the most immediate, most dangerous thing that's facing us right now, because they're not going to give up on that conflict. They want it very badly, and they're going to try to get it no matter what it takes.
I was recently looking at how many nukes Russia has and how many nukes we have, and they've actually got more than we do, but it doesn't matter. There's so many nukes that we could blow up the planet multiple times over. And I wonder with, with the different types of warfare, I don't know if you've seen any of the podcasts I've done where I think that there could be a much more sinister plan with the stratospheric aerosol injections. I was looking at these Hitachi microchips that are literally as thin as a human strand of hair, but much smaller. And the Hewlett-Packard Central Nervous System of the Earth program, they want to send 100 trillion chips around the Earth to track everything in living time. Have you ever wondered if they could possibly be spreading some type of tracking chips via the aerosol injections to where they could track in real time everything via vibrational frequencies?
I have not looked into that because, and when I saw you talking about that, I turned it off because it makes me too paranoid. You got to take it easy on that stuff, Rex. It'll drive you nuts. But
it's
but
exciting.
but I don't think they even need that to track us. I think everything we do, we're living in a complete surveillance state at this point, globally. Right. Because they don't even need to go to those lengths between the satellites, between our own devices now that these major corporations are putting software and hardware into our televisions, into the microwaves that can monitor us and that can give them real-time information on everything that's happening with us. So the surveillance state is here. The Orwellian state is here already. They don't need to go to those lengths to monitor everything that we do. And people, we need that's why we need a revolution against these the elite powers in control and their systems and their stranglehold on all of these, on the systems that are in place over us right now.
Somebody's asking if you've ever seen alien tech similar to like gray goo.
What's that last word?
Gray goo, like the self-replicating artificial intelligence.
No, I have not, because I have not. I've never visited Area 51 when it was there in Nevada, but I have spoken with people who have experienced that sort of thing. In particular, Boyd Bushman was a lead scientist for one of the major defense contractors in their skunk works, and he told me the stories, and he actually received technology, and he had constant contact with Area 51 and the underground base that was there, and he got to see quite a bit of alien technology. He got to work with it, and he told me some of the stories of the stuff, and it was amazing. We're talking disruption of gravity. We're talking about stuff that was able to create disruptions in the time-space flow, and amazing stuff. And he said that sort of thing was worked on at the underground lab in Roswell all the time, and that there was actually alien visitors present there as well, but that contact with them was very, very limited and strictly controlled.
Did he talk about what they look like?
Yes, he said the ones that he was aware of were, he said, reptilian in nature, appeared kind of reptilian in nature. However, he said the very, very few technicians that were allowed to be in a chamber where they were being monitored at all times, and were always told not to look up at the alien visitors the few times that they were actually in the same chamber with them. And if they violated that, if they were looked at the back of these alien visitors, that they could feel a growl, they could hear a growl in their heads, because it was like a warning, don't look at us. But what they could see was apparently reptilian in nature. That's all I got from him.
That sounds like something. Have you heard of Lynn Buchanan?
Yes, that name sounds very familiar.
Very nice guy. He's done a lot of black ops stuff, and he was in the military, and he told us about an experience on Leak Project, how he went into this underground facility where there was a bunch of people at their desks doing computer work, just military dudes. And this is his first day going underground. And one of them looked like they look like a reptilian. And I questioned him on it. And he said, he tried to downplay it by saying, oh, well, maybe it was just one person wearing a costume to make a joke out of it. But I could tell the first time. Anyway, whatever. It was fascinating nonetheless. And what you're talking about is incredible. And I would certainly be just amazed to see one. It would be so fascinating to validate all of this, because I've had personal experiences that have happened to me that I haven't shared on Leak Project, that I have no question ETs exist. But you think that they're all interdimensional and not necessarily physical. And why do you think that, with as big as the universe is? I mean, even the TRAPPIST system that's just 40 light years away, which is like our neighbor, galactic neighbor, they say there's possibly 3 planets in the Goldilocks zone. I mean, even mathematically speaking, wouldn't it be impossible to not have other physical beings like us on other planets just like our own in the universe somewhere?
Right, but then why aren't they here already? If all of these existed and they were there, then they've got to be interstellar by now, judging from the age of the universe and by just probabilities in general. So the chances that they were there means that they should been here by now. And I'm talking in large numbers, doing open commercial trade on the White House lawn, in front of the UN building. They should have been, if they're physical, like us, if they really are physical, like what the crash of Roswell tries to teach us. If they're really just a bunch of physical beings like us, just traveling around in these tin cans, and they could just, then why aren't they here in open numbers? Why aren't they here, collecting, trading, doing everything that they're supposed to openly and in large numbers? And the answer is they're not. They're not. They're more of this peekaboo phenomena where they appear, don't appear. They're here, and so it's like Jacques Vallée has said in the past, the alien visitor phenomena is much more like spiritistic than physical. It just seems that way, which lends to the further hypothesis that if they're not physical, then they're not in the physical universe, and yet they are here on Earth all the time. So that's why it's an intergalactic phenomena, but not from our physical time and space. It's from other places. And the place where I first got that is from an FBI agent who wrote a memo in 1947. And it's something that I examined in my book, The Extra Dimensionals. And it's the memorandum that I call the smoking gun document. And it's one that's been downloaded by more people than any other government document in the world. It's available for people to look at vault.fbi.gov. Yeah. So have you seen that document, Rex?
I've seen many from that website, like the one from Guy Hoddle or Hostel or whatever. Guy Hoddle. Yeah.
Hotel, yeah.
That's 1950, I think. The one from 47 that you're referring to, I don't know if I've seen that exact one, but I might have.
Yeah, and it's dated July 8th, 1947. If you go on vault.fbi.gov, you just go to the right where it says unexplained phenomena, you click on that. And then on the left where it says UFO, you click on that. And then on first several groups of UFO documents, you go to the first one, and then you go to page 22 on that. And right there, it's the smoking gun document. It was written by an FBI supervisor who was sitting at another place at that time, but he wrote a memo to the scientific community because apparently there was this huge wave in 1947 of UFO sightings all over the world. Huge. And so the scientists were desperate to hear from anybody what this stuff is. And he wrote a memo that he said he had an informant on there. On there it says, I have an informant. And he says, my informant is supernormal, which is an old-timey word for supernatural. And so he said, here's what my informant told me. And he gives 8 conclusions. And on there, one of the conclusions is, he says, alien visitors are not physical. He says they are coming here from other levels of existence, other dimensions. He calls them locus. Those are level dimensions that never intersect with our reality. He says they change their vibration to match our physical vibration for a short time. And that's how they appear here. Same thing for UFOs. UFOs come from other dimensions. They appear here. And he says there's nobody inside those UFOs. They're empty. He says they come here accompanying the alien visitors to help them to carry out tasks. And then he says UFOs aren't made of metal. They're made out of some kind of radiant energy. He also says they have such technology, we should never attack them because they'll destroy our entire Air Force if they're ever attacked. And he gives a whole bunch of other conclusions out there that are amazing. And that was really that document was the center of what got me thinking about what alien visitors really are and what their real agenda is.
That parallels so much, John, with a text that I read yesterday from the Gnostic. I've got the Nag Hammadi scriptures, which I've gone through extensively, these Gnostic texts, which talk a lot about the archons, the creators, the manipulators, the demiurge, and the archons are creators, or the Anunnaki, which I think the Anunnaki are the archons in this reference. Thoth describes, because it's Hermes Trismegistus having a conversation with Asclepius, and Hermes Trismegistus is Thoth, is Thoth, is the bringer of knowledge. And Thoth says that the archons, the Anunnaki, the gods, they are created from pure matter. So they can, what you just said parallels that to a T, even that these spiritual scriptures talk about how entities like Enlil can transform to a bird, or how, even Jesus transforms into different beings. Now, I think those are stories adopted from other stories, but the parallel theme is these gods were formed in a different matter. And that would make me think that maybe that's why the planet at a higher level is being terraformed the way that it is, and why these serpent archons that are talked about in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth have to work through humans and have to work through blood to get here. That would make sense. So they're trying to create this like synthetic blood, these different archetypes, these different vessels, so that they can then they can live through that without having to worry about, like, that's their survival. And what you're saying, the harvest and all that kind of stuff, it all parallels, and it links up to the Sumerian tablets. It links up to the Egyptian Book of the Dead. It links up to the Gnostic text. It even links up to the Hebrew stuff. It's just different words, different labels. And that makes so much sense about these deities coming in a different form, so they can therefore transfer in a physical. They can't stay here too long, though. That's right on the money.
Right. And the thing is, alien abduction and alien visitor phenomena, it's not leveling off. It's only increasing as time goes on. And what's the reason for that? Is because they are desperate to form connection with human beings. We have something that they want very badly. And Zecharia Sitchin used to write, they want our gold, but with their technology, they could have had all our gold a long time ago, very easily. What they want is more precious than gold. They want connection to human souls, to human spirit. That's what they want. And that's what they're working for so hard.
Let me add to that real quick, because I have, ever since the beginning, I've said that Zachary, people that think they just came here for the gold are missing the big picture. Did they come here for gold? Sure, they absolutely could have. But when you talk about the soul connection, that is the prized possession. That is the most coveted. That is divine spark. That's what am I looking for? Priceless. You cannot put a value to the soul. So for them to connect to the soul and to feed off of that, that is much more powerful than gold alone. Now, I will say this, Zecharia Sitchin, this guy is freaking brilliant. I've been reading through the 12th planet, and he hits so many things that are spot freaking on. I mean, the guy is genius. So I feel like he's been used as a patsy for a lot of people, but it doesn't mean he was right on everything, by any means. So let's hope he was wrong about Nibiru. I don't want him to be right about that.
Yeah. Well, mainstream media is taught to try to find, in these alternative thinkers, try to find something that they can portray as ridiculous, and use that one point to try to discredit everything that a great scholar has created. Like when they go after David Icke for the reptilian Queen's royal family of England, and they use that as the club always against David Icke. And they do the same thing with Zecharia Sitchin with wanting the gold and all that. So it's a very common thing, and it's too bad, because it tends to work. That's the unfortunate thing.
Oh yeah, it certainly does. What can you tell our audience? I'm getting a lot of questions about Antarctica and what's going on out there.
I'll tell people what I do with Antarctica is, and I've never been part of a secret space program. I haven't been sent to Antarctica for anything weird. But what I do have is I have web crawlers out, which anybody can do. You just have to figure out how how to do it. Web crawls out for information on Antarctica from people who are actually there or returning from Antarctica. And these can be low-level workers or medium-level workers. And everything keeps on coming back that they found a civilization under the ice. Some kind of civilization has been found under the ice. And it's there, and part of it is apparently dead. But the big prize that is the reason why in 2 years we've gone from 5 countries being there to 32. Now there's 32 countries there with military, scientific personnel. And the reason for that is because there is alien tech that is there. And the nations want their share of that alien tech. Stuff that's mind-blowing, apparently, is there. And so now they're all jockeying for position to see who gets what portion. And that's gonna lead to some amazing things in the next few months. But they need a cover story. And I think the cover story is going to be Nazi base. They found a Nazi base with advanced technology under the ice, which there could be a Nazi base there, New Schwabenland. That could be, but if it is there, that's like 1/1000th of what they found. But it's going to be used as the overall cover story to prevent people from looking any further, because the overall directive is still in effect. You cannot reveal anything about alien visitors or alien or UFOs or anything of that sort. So that's still in effect, and I think it's gonna continue to be in effect. But something's going to be released in Antarctica in the next few months, and some of it's going to depend on Putin and Trump and how they decide to deal with it as well.
You know, I've noticed that the ginormous ozone hole is over Antarctica, and it's stayed there. Have you ever wondered if maybe certain powers that be are attempting to manipulate that part of the planet to cause the ice to melt so they can start pulling up this tech more also and taking advantage of it?
It could be, but I don't believe that they need anything to melt. They are right now putting so much infrastructure into there. If you go on Google satellite, you can actually see carriers that are coming into the peninsula, the Antarctica Peninsula, where most of the personnel are. That it's an extraordinary level of men, materials, of people that's going in there like never before. And they're building a huge infrastructure. All the major companies are there. McDonnell Douglas, all of them. They're all there. They're hiring. Anybody who needs a job, they're hiring right now for Antarctica. And the level of stuff that they're building there right now, it's extraordinary. So they're going to have no problem getting under the ice to whatever is under there, whatever is there. But I have a sense that there's something alive. There's something alive as well, not just a flash frozen civilization, because the way that these politicians and these religious leaders are being summoned to Antarctica, like on a dime, all of a sudden, John Kerry has to drop everything on election day and run down there. It's just so that he doesn't even get the time to think of a cover story. So that when he's asked, he's like, "Oh, I'm here for global warming." It just didn't. And that's happening more and more. There's happening more and more. I mean, the King of Spain, King Carlos, and his wife were taken there all of a sudden by the Chilean Navy, and they visited there, and they were asked, and the King of Spain was asked, "Why are you going to Antarctica all of a sudden? What's going on?" And he said, "Oh, I've always wanted to see the scenery in Antarctica." Nobody told him there's no scenery in Antarctica. It's just snow and ice. There's nothing except for the new pyramids that have been revealed.
No,
that's
not
it.
true, John. If you go to Google Maps, you can see plenty of pictures of palm trees out there. Here's the new conspiracy, John. This is funny because actually, you know how sometimes people will put a picture on Google Maps that's kind of out of place?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, somebody put a bunch of pictures from Costa Rica or somewhere in like the beautiful South Pacific in Antarctica, Google Maps. So now there's podcasts where people are like, look, I told you the earth is flat. Just look, Antarctica is full of beaches. It's full of palm trees and there's coconuts right there. You can see it. It's a big conspiracy. Well, folks, maybe, just maybe the people that put those pictures there either did it on purpose or it accidentally got put there. And that's not Antarctica. That's Costa Rica. So have you seen that, man? It's just, I love the internet. You know, I mean, everything is real. Everything. I bench press 1,000 pounds, John. I speak 14 languages.
I believe it. I believe it. But but I'll tell you, the flat Earth has been pushed in the last couple of years really hard all over the internet, and I can tell you the reason for that. That's a disinfo operation that has been pushed for one reason, because they want to discredit hollow Earth by talking about flat Earth, so that people in their minds, because they knew this Antarctica stuff was going to come out and it was going to lead directly into hollow Earth as being a real thing. And they wanted to try to push forward this flat Earth thing in order for, in people's minds, it'll be associated with hollow Earth, and they'll just dismiss the whole thing and prevent any sort of awakening through the hollow Earth thinking. That's part of the reason. That's the main reason that this flat Earth stuff is pushed so hard.
Well, and it also if somebody, and I appreciate people thinking outside of the box, because there's so many questions people have, and I appreciate that. Yet when you bring up the flat Earth and people kind of get stuck to that, then what happens is it discredits many other conspiracy theories, like you said. So it's just across the board. So I'm getting to the point now where if I'm going to have people just continue to troll the flat Earth, say the Earth is flat, you're a conspiracy theorist, shape-shifting, 32nd degree Freemason Rex, because you believe the Earth is a globe. I'm thinking about just saying, okay, have a nice day, you're blocked, because I've had enough. You know, please, folks, it's the 21st century. If you want to believe that, right on, please do so, but just take it easy, okay? Maybe think of some alternatives. Just go outside and find me the edge and go, well, that's a Rex. I hear that all the time. People say, oh, yeah, that's the biggest first thing to say, find the edge. But you're a conspiracy theorist for seeing those pictures and thinking that they're, well, let me ask you this. Many of the pictures that we see are photoshopped. Many of the images that we see of the Earth aren't really the Earth. So do you think that could be because, what's your take on it? Then I'll tell you mine. What's your theory on it?
You know, it could be part of what I said. A lot of these things are reverse engineered. Like, for instance, the moon landing, you know, where we actually did have a real moon landing that went forward at NASA, but we also had a fake moon landing that went forward and was sponsored by a secret space program and went forward. And then most of the photography that they ended up using for the moon landing was the fake moon landing photography and so forth. So a lot of that goes on, where if the elite powers in control want to control a topic, they'll just have created, there's these shops that will create faked photos, faked Photoshop stuff, and insert it into this particular topic so that everything regarding that topic will be discredited. And they do that all the time.
That's really powerful too, because I was going to ask you about the moon landing. Thank you for answering that question. I have been able to fully debunk the images that we see, the footage of it being the moon, because they've got the number 33 on the ground. I mean, that's just one of many. You can see the lights in the background if you adjust it a little bit, but I certainly feel that we've been to the moon also. So that will discredit us ever going to the moon. And do you have any insider info on what's actually on the moon? Like, what is the moon? Is it a holographic structure, or not holographic? Is it a artificial structure? Is it a spaceship?
It seems like it is, but you know, the stuff that I know is it's in the public domain. I mean, the great work that's been done by Jose Escamilla, where he's put it out showing with highlights that are not photoshopping, highlights that actually emphasize the real structures, the real features on the dark side, and it shows clearly that there are massive structures and ruins and signs of civilization that is or was there on the dark side of the moon. I mean, it's very apparent that all these photos that we get from NASA are doctored, they're falsified, they're photoshopped, they're blurred. The moon is not gray. The moon is not gray. It's just not. It has actual color. And when you see the great work that's done by somebody like Jose Escamilla, you can see that there's structures on there that are so large, like that sonic, there's that satellite dish that appears to be almost a mile in diameter, things that are so large that they're not practical for humans to use. And there's that cannon, there's some kind of a cannon, again, that's like half a mile long. It's an extraordinary structure. And so those things are in the public domain. It's out there. And it's people just need to see that stuff for themselves so they can see that. And of course, like you said, there was that explosion that went forward on the moon where it rang like a bell that made it seem that it's hollow. Yeah, it is hollow because it rang for a very long time. And so, yeah, these things are out there. People just need to look at them and see what's really the truth about what's going on with the moon. But who would have built it and for what purpose? You know, that's the question that we still don't know. Do
you think there's factions within the government, though, that actually know? I mean, do you think that there might be those vaults of intel that they just, like the Vatican suppresses and the Smithsonian and certain private institutions?
Well, I mean, you know, I recently got to sit down with Jacques Vallée, and he told me in a couple of sentences stuff that would have taken me an entire book to explain. And one of the things he said to me was that the government doesn't have anything that they can provide for disclosure. There's never going to be disclosure because there's no government that has a plan that they can uncover and say, here it is. This is what's going on. What the government has, what the government agencies have, is mountains and mountains of data. They got lots of data. They've got all kinds of data. If you go to the Air Force right now and you were given access to everything, they'd have mountains of data on UFOs, on different real UFOs, genuine extraterrestrial, extra-dimensional beings and vehicles. And you could find, you know, lots and lots of data. Same thing with the FBI, CIA. You could find mountains and mountains of data. But what they don't have is some kind of central plan that shows who the alien visitors are, what their purpose is, what their agenda is. Nobody in government has that. That's why disclosure is not a real thing. What will be real is revelation, when alien visitors decide themselves to reveal themselves, who they are, what they want, and what their agenda is.
When that happens, is it going to be full-on Armageddon?
Well, partially, yeah, it will be partially, because there's going to be factions. There's going to be factions of alien visitors that are on our side, that are here to help us and that are here to benefit us. And so for that reason, there's going to be competing agenda. And then again, you have the elite powers in control who are in this uneasy alliance with malevolent alien visitors. And that could turn bad at any moment. If the elite powers in control decide they're not being given enough control, they're not being given enough domination over the earth. So yeah, that could turn into chaos. It definitely could. But that's exactly why we need to educate each other right now, before it happens, before this revelation comes forward. And we need to help each other to understand and distinguish what beneficial alien visitors are and which ones are malevolent. And most of all, we need to recognize who these elite powers in control are. And we need to recognize their agendas so we can break free of them before we get to that point of Armageddon.
You know, I mean, do these organizations, though, fund the FBI, fund the CIA, fund the Department of Defense, fund the military-industrial complex? You know, they're paying the congressmen, these, you know, whatever. I mean, so how do you break out of that without? I mean, you know, how do you do it in a fashion that's, you know, mind over matter kind of deal?
You can only break out of it on the micro level. And because it goes forward on the macro level, at a high level. And, you know, the elite powers in control, they don't fund individual organizations at the national level. They don't do that. They fund agendas. So one of their agendas, and this is not political, but one of their agendas worldwide, for instance, is for every country, every person in the world to disarm themselves from firearms. That's one of their most successful agendas worldwide. We currently have almost every country has had these mass shootings that often at schools in the Western world, especially, that have led their legislators to disarm the population. Today, there's only about four countries left on the earth that are still armed, that still arm their citizens. That's like the United States, Israel. I forgot which are the other two. But and that agenda will never stop. That's a globalist agenda to disarm the population. They'll always go forward through all the political parties, through everything. And so that's one item. Another item of a global agenda is space travel, space weaponization. There's many other. Also, another one is, of course, never to let out the truth of alien visitors, who they are, what real UFOs are. So there's many of these agenda items, and those agenda items are always extremely well-funded, well-resourced, and always manned with personnel at the highest levels, always. And those will never stop because the elite powers and control are multi-generational also.
Couple more questions before we close out, and I really appreciate your time. I'd like to have you on here for a 24-hour marathon that I've got coming up in September, but I'll have you on for a couple hours during that time, or at least an hour, hopefully.
Excellent.
But
excellent.
What is up? Okay, so first off, let me paint the picture here.
Good.
I used to be a total denier of Planet X. I used to be like, no, it's a conspiracy theory, it's a psyop, it's mind control, it's not real. We know for an absolute fact now that there are dozens, hundreds of trans-Neptunian objects. Many of these orbit our sun. So there absolutely is a Planet X. There's no question. There's Planet X, there's Planet 11, there's Planet 12, there's Planet 20. Our solar system is a lot bigger than we've been taught based on all this new information from astrophysicists like Michael Brown and others that are very intelligent. That doesn't mean that it's Nibiru, though. I don't necessarily think that's Nibiru by any means because they have different orbits, different sizes, etc. But what's your take on the original Planet X that people thought had a 3,600-year doom cycle? And are there planets? I know this is a multi-level question here, so thank you for keeping up with me. I know you can, and most people that are listening to the show. Is there imminent doom with a Planet X type scenario? Is the government planning for a Planet X type scenario that could cause serious catastrophes? What's up with Planet X?
I don't think there's any imminent doom from Planet X or from any other source, as a matter of fact. And the reason I think that is because of what appears to be the holographic computer simulation reality of our universe. In other words, we have had in the past, during known history, we've had numerous what should have been extinction level events, and somehow they just never happen. They just never happen. And because of some of these, like for instance, I'm working with a History Channel right now on the Cold War, and on a special that's got to do with the Cold War. And so they're having me look at the reality of what really went on in the 60s and 70s and the 80s with the Cold War, where the Soviet Union had like 1,000 nuclear missiles pointed at the North American continent, and the United States had about 1,000 also pointed at the Russian continent as well, the Soviet Union. And the fact that we made it through that period with nobody blowing off several nuclear missiles, the chances of that happening is almost infinitesimally small. And yet here we are. We got through it. And it's very unlikely that could have happened. And the people knew the real history, what really went on. I mean, it's amazing that the chances of us getting through it is very small. It just makes me believe that we are in a holographic computer simulation reality where every time there's an extinction level event, a line of code is just kind of crossed out. And they just say, no, not going to happen. And let's just change that code and write in something new. Nope, we survived. We survived. They survived. And I get a feeling that's what's going on. So that Planet X, I just don't think it's a concern. I think that the programmers can just change that line of code and we'll be fine.
It's change the line of code. And if they don't do it, we can just rewrite the cerebral cortex via mind. I like that. What's up with Chernobyl? Was it a false flag? Or, I mean, was it an act of war?
You know, that's something. It's a television program that I'm working on, so I can't give away too much about it. Except I'll tell you this: it appears that Chernobyl, if for people who don't know, was the meltdown of this nuclear reactor in Ukraine. Yeah, it was Ukraine, and that basically ended up radiating like 100 square miles of land in an area and killing a lot of people. And it appears that it's very possible that which could have been an extinction level event for that continent was actually an act of sabotage. And there's evidence coming out that it's very possible that was the case. And so that's all I can really say about that.
Thanks for letting me put you on the spot. Much appreciated. It's been a real honor, John. I feel like I've known you forever, man. This has been great. I appreciate you coming on the Leak Project.
Has been great, Rex, and thank you so much for being the hardest working man on YouTube. You're pretty cool. And
hey, thank you very much. Also, folks, I wanted to let you know, make sure to pick up your copy today. The Para Investigators, 52 True Tells and Concepts of Supernaturally Gifted Investigators. Also, the Extra Dimensionals, True Tells and Concepts of Alien Visitors. Just type in John, T-A-M-A books.com, johntama-books.com, and we'll have you on again soon, hopefully.
Great. Thanks so much, Rex. I can't wait. That'd be awesome.
Thank you.